Welcome to Dub's First Year Stories, a podcast where students and former students share stories about their first year in Utrecht.
My name is Rafaella Karadsheh, and I'm a psychology student studying at the University College Utrecht. I started my studies in the fall of 2018, and I graduate this summer in the May of 2021. This is my first year story. I spent most of my childhood growing up in Michigan, before moving to Jordan at the age of 10. So I spent most of my life jumping between the two countries. Because I was able to grow up with two very different backgrounds, I wanted to experience yet another culture during my college experience. I hadn't lived in Europe, and I spent months on end browsing for the perfect university. I finally settled on looking into the Netherlands, where my brother was studying at the time. That's when I found Utrecht University, and in turn, University College Utrecht, or UCU. The program at UCU was quite appealing because I could develop my own curriculum and explore different fields of study. The academic flexibility was quite nice to have, considering I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to study. It took a while before I settled on psychology, which I was able to combine with anthropology and a minor in literature. When I first arrived in Utrecht, I wasn't sure what I was going to expect. Besides spending a few days to drop my brother off at university, I never visited the Netherlands properly before. Before arriving in Utrecht, I had spent countless hours looking through images on Google and exploring Google Street View to get an idea of what I was getting myself into. There were a few things that really stood out to me. The first were the images of the canals during the early summer. The water sparkled under the sunlight, and people were strolling by the canals looking at the blossoming flowers. I distinctly remember seeing images of the Dom Tower and Dom Church, which looked so large in comparison to the tiny shops in the streets next to them. My family and I first arrived in Utrecht at night, so I didn't get to see much of the city. But when we took the time to explore the next day, I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the city center for the first time. It was even more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. I recall standing by the Janskerk and looking at the Dom Church, peeking through the streets. That was the exact location where my favorite picture of Utrecht was taken, and it was quite exciting to see it all come to life. The bustling rush of people walking along, with bikes zooming along the roads. The Janskerk is still my favorite place to go in Utrecht, especially on Saturday when the flower market is set up. It's really nice to walk around and see all the different kinds of plants, and I almost never go home empty-handed. Starting university was already stressful as it was, but I got lucky and had an introduction week at the University College. The week was packed with activities and workshops to encourage us to mingle with our peers and prepare for college life. It was there that I ended up meeting so many of the people who I consider my closest friends today. I do have to say, one of the things that surprised me most was the sense of community at UCU. Because nearly all the students live on a campus, myself included, the sense of community is very strong. You see these people almost every day, which makes you develop this unspoken bond with everyone. I think having that sense of community really helped make my first semester so much easier to deal with, but I still found myself struggling to adapt to university life. Like most first years, I was struggling with homesickness. I had never been this far away from my parents, let alone out of the country. I was calling my friends every night and patiently waiting for Christmas break to come around so I could go home and be reunited with them. It wasn't the best feeling in the world, and this only got worse as November approached. My family and I always loved celebrating Christmas, and we'd usually start preparing very early. The second November hit, we'd have our Christmas tree up and decorated. We'd be playing Christmas music and baking cookies, and it's something I've looked forward to every single year. We also usually spend Christmas for a few days with my extended family. We'll have big dinners and exchange presents. And when my cousins and I were younger, my grandma used to hire a fake Santa to give us presents on Christmas Eve. But for the first time ever, I was going to miss the build-up to Christmas celebrations because my semester ended quite late. And I remember feeling very upset about that. At the time, I was living with 10 people in my first year, all of whom were from different places in the world and different ages as well. So it was a really interesting place to live. Our living room and kitchen were in the same room, so you had to pass through them to get to your bedroom. And because of this open space, we would see each other often and chat about our day, which was really nice. One day I was telling my housemates how excited I was for Christmas and how my family and I usually prepare for it early on, and also that I was quite disappointed I wouldn't be able to go home for that. I was trying to recreate as much of the traditions on my own as possible, but it just wasn't the same. A few days later, I woke up to Santa Baby by Ariane Grande blasting in the house. It turned out my housemates loved Christmas just as much as I did, so they were able to keep up some of the traditions. After that, we had a house meeting and decided we were going to have as many Christmas celebrations together as possible before we left for break. One of the first things we did was buy a Christmas tree. I remember waking up and running downstairs with excitement when it first arrived. I had a little ornament that I hung on the tree and felt quite happy to have contributed to the decorating. We also ended up buying Christmas decorations to make our house feel cozier. I remember one of my housemates had a wooden deer head mounted on the wall, and we put sparkling red ribbons around it to make it more Christmassy. We also set up Sinterklaas and Christmas dinner one night. Because we all have different schedules, we almost never met up at the same time, so it was really nice to have everyone together for a few hours. We put some tables together, strung up some Christmas lights on the kitchen ceiling, and lit some red candles to set the mood. After seeing us all come together, I really understood what the Dutch word gezellig meant. We ate a really nice dinner and exchanged presents and poems for Sinterklaas. One of my housemates noticed how much I liked Christmas and bought me an ornament to hang on the tree. And this was one of my favorite nights at UCU. It was just such a nice feeling to be able to sit around with people I lived with, sharing stories and laughing with each other. Of course, we also had cheap glühwein, which really gave it a university student feeling. Once the night was over, I remember going to bed with a smile on my face. It made me realize how lucky I was to live with such welcoming people, and I found it easier to call UCU my home. At that point, I had spent so much of my semester studying and worrying about deadlines that I failed to acknowledge how much I enjoyed the social life around me. Looking back, despite the stress and uncertainty that came with starting university, I really enjoyed my first year. I was blessed to have found a community and support, both in academic and social settings. But one thing I wish I could tell my first-year self is to enjoy every minute of university. Cherish the memories you make with your friends. Don't spend too much time worrying about that deadline. Take a moment to go on a walk and appreciate the city. And looking back at my time at university, I can confidently say that things get better with time. Managing assignments becomes easier and you begin to find your place. Most importantly, you begin to fall in love with this new place you call home. And this is my first-year story.
This was another episode of First Year Stories. Have you experienced something remarkable in your first year in Utrecht that you would like to share in this podcast? Then please email deredactie@uu.nl and we will get in touch with you.